when I, after spending 8.5 years in corporate with a tiny company, some of you may have heard about, called Verizon. I was their vice president for public policy. That's another point of connection. I did a lot of policy work, Josh, up on the Hill. Doing that 8.5 years later, the work was good. It was meaningful for the end recipients. I just didn't love it. And it was a big, big source of dissatisfaction for me. And when I finally got laid off from corporate, I took that as the universe basically saying to me, okay, Faizun, here's your opportunity. What are you going to do now? Are you going to jump back right into corporate because it's the easiest thing to do? You want money coming in right away, go get another job? Or are you going to do something different? Because I've heard you bitching and moaning about the fact that it's not your path for many, many years. What are you going to do now? And that's what I did. Now, it wasn't easy, but I would say for me, getting over the, if you want to call it the imposter syndrome, it was two things. Number one, I finally realized I would be my best investment ever. Because the return on my investment, which is me, is always going to be greater than anything else I could ever do. And in order for me to be able to find that happiness, that satisfaction of feeling like I was doing work that mattered, of being of service to others, it was only going to come from that. So I finally said yes. And I said yes to myself. This is number two. First, I'm my best investment. Two, you have to say yes before you are ready. We never feel, all of the stars are ever going to align. But you have to be able to say yes before you're ready. And I did that. And I did that not really knowing what was going to be required of me in starting this new business in an industry that I knew absolutely nothing about, very much like Bob. I mean, I knew what franchises were, but other than, burgers and fries, McDonald's, I didn't really know much about it. So my friend, I would say those two things. For me, you are going to be the best investment you ever make in anything or anyone. And two, you have to say yes before you're ready. So I just wanted to share those thoughts, Bob.
Great. What's the downturn in the economy and the impact of the pandemic done to your business?
So, I think March, we were all kind of dazed, didn't quite know what was happening. In my own business, March, April, probably getting into the second, third week of May, it would be safe to say I was hyperventilating into a brown bag for pretty much most of those 2.5 months. True story. Guys, I say it like it is. And it wasn't easy. It's incredibly nerve-wracking. And for any of you, who've ever owned a business, when you know that it is your work that puts food on the table for the family, it's incredibly unnerving. But I think it goes back again to the 2 points I made. You have to be able to have that kind of confidence in yourself that, yes, I did make the right decision by choosing to forge my own path, start my own business. And that, yes, there are going to be ups and there's going to be downs. And I think more importantly than the ups, it's how we navigate the valleys that ultimately determines that determines the metal that we are made of. Mid-May, third week of May, Bob, things started to pick up. I think people looked around, took stock and said, oh my, this is not going away anytime soon. What am I going to do? And remember, by May, I forget the exact numbers, some ridiculous amount of people had gotten laid off from their jobs, right? Employers were getting rid of people left and right. And so you had this mass of people, incredibly qualified professionals from every kind of industry who were saying, oh my gosh, I have either gotten laid off or I am going to get furloughed or I am in imminent fear of getting laid off any day now. What does the future look for me? What does my career look like for me? May, June, Bob, starting about June, July, things started to pick back up. The first 3 months, I lost probably 6 to 8 people who were literally weeks away from signing their franchise agreement. As an entrepreneur, when you think that, your heart skips a beat because you know what you've put into it. People have started coming back. I would say, interestingly enough, September was a turning point. I think psychologically as human beings, with the fall, leaves are turning, it's getting cold outside, we are kind of nesting inside, with that whole hibernation mentality takes over. I think this is also a time in the year, traditionally for me, I have found, where a lot of people start thinking about, we are in the last quarter of the year. What am I going to be doing in the new year? What does that look like? And if you're at all thinking of doing something different in your career, you start to put things into place now. So starting September, Bob, I typically am always busy. I am incredibly busy. There are people coming out of the woodwork saying, I got laid off. I hate my job. We're thinking about reopening. The thought of going into the office and working with all these people that I don't particularly care for does not make me happy. I have to look at something else. Can you help me figure out what that something else looks like? So definitely we are seeing folks come back, Bob.
Another question, what are you seeing in the hospitality business? One of the guests today was particularly interested in the hospitality business, and I think that includes restaurants and everything.
In the restaurant space, I work with probably close to 100 brands at this point, give or take. And there are a number of things we are seeing, but we are seeing, to use everybody's favorite word from the last couple of months, we are seeing a lot of pivots. Josh mentioned a couple of them. We have seen restaurants that have shifted their offering to more takeout. So where they had not invested a lot before in delivery options, order and come pick up, they're doing a lot of that. I see many brands that are putting a lot of money into that. One of the best examples is McDonald's. Now they're a little bit of a different animal because they're so huge. They have so much resources behind them. But when the pandemic began, they saw the hardest hit portion of their entire sales picture as being the breakfast category. So you had people who were driving into their jobs. They would stop at McDonald's, pick up breakfast and go on to work. Well, that was gone. Everybody was at home. And so they quickly shifted. They shut down the breakfast category. They really reduced those options and instead focused on lunch and dinner. What they were seeing were customers being stuck at home, still wanted to be able to feel as though they were not held captive in their homes. They were still going out to pick up the food and come back, again, for lunch and dinner. That's a big pivot we have seen. The second thing we have seen more operationally, Josh mentioned this as well. There are many brands I'm seeing, partners of mine, who have stepped in and they're actually negotiating the lease agreements for their franchisees. To Josh's point, there are landlords who are saying, okay, well, maybe I'll take a little bit less money from you every month versus no money at all, because you're going to shut down and walk away and I have empty space. So renegotiating those lease agreements has been a really big one. A couple of the other things that I have seen, and again, this kind of gets a little bit, Bob, into, paradoxically, if you've ever thought about starting a business, I think this may be one of the best times to start a business.
I agree.
Right? The huger the disruption, I think the huger the opportunity. I certainly have lived my life and my career that way. Cost of capital. We have seen interest rates like we have never seen before. They're so low. We have seen very specific programs come out from the federal government that at least I had never seen before. September 27th, so it just ended. It's a very specific type of loan program that the SBA had come out with, where they said, if you are starting a new business, and oh, by the way, if that business is a franchise and you take out an SBA loan, the first 6 months of those loan payments, we are going to make for you. So depending on the size of the investment, Bob, that can be pretty sizable. I have had several clients who've taken advantage of that. They went through the due diligence, researched the brands, lined up the funding, got their funding application in by that September 27th deadline. So there's a lot happening. I don't want to overstate it, though. I think there are a lot of mom and pops, particularly not big franchise brands that have a lot of resources behind them. A lot of mom and pops who, quite frankly, Bob, they're not coming back. You know, when I go to drop my daughter off at Kumon, um, the shopping center that the Kumon tutorial is located in, there's a bunch of other restaurants. I was sitting in the car waiting for her the other day, and there were two. One was a Vietnamese restaurant. The other was like a American fast casual, shut down. And it said, you know, we are no longer here. Um, Mom and pop brands. One of them, actually, I know the owners quite well. Haven't spoken to her in a while, but I can guess. So I think absolutely. I think, you know, there's the saying, we may not all be in the same boat, but we most certainly all are in the same storm. So
Yeah.
we're in the same storm, right? But it's how it's where we are. You know, one of the other things too, Bob, it reminds me sort of very viscerally the difference between how mom and pops are doing as compared to franchise brands. And from my perspective, it really cuts across whatever industry you happen to be in, not just food, not just hospitality. Um, I know someone, she's local, and she opened up her second location of her business, which provides yoga services. So you come in, you take yoga classes. She had approached me at this point, probably 2.5 years ago, and said, listen, you know, we've had some tremendous success with this first location. Um, we would really like to talk to you about turning our existing business into a franchise brand, which, as you know, is the second piece of the work that I do with a lot of my clients. And we had some conversations, but clearly her heart was not really in that. Fast forward, she opened up the second location someplace in McLean in Tysons. And the last I heard, she had gotten into a very bad situation with her landlord, who basically was not giving her any kind of concession. So if you think about it, who's going in to take yoga classes? Even if you do offer those classes, people cannot be spaced together the way they used to be. So you have a reduction in numbers of the people who are actually coming. You have many other people who might have had a 6-month, a year-long membership with you, who's coming in and saying, listen, I haven't taken a class in the last 2 months. I need to cancel my membership. So you have sort of the spiraling effect. She's not in a very good position right now. And I think the last 6, 7, 8 months, again, I do hope it works out for her. But depending on how huge that financial hit was for you, depending on what it is you were doing, there are many businesses that will not be able to recover.
I was looking at opening up a business right before COVID hit. And one of the things I was looking at from a financial standpoint was trying to automate some of my processes and offerings. And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the future of automation and AI and how that might impact hospitality, restaurants. I know from a people perspective and jobs and all that, it's not the most popular idea, but I think it's inevitable. So I'd kind of like to figure out, how do I get ahead of it?
On the restaurant front, I mean, you've seen it and it's already happened, right? So the pivot and the shift has happened, and it has definitely an implication on the employment side. But as a business owner, you know, like, you'd be interested in the restaurant, at least in the restaurant world, normally labor is about 30% of your gross, right? And there's a huge nut there to crack. But you know, where I've seen it most in the restaurant side is the servers, right? So there's been a decrease in servers with touch-free ordering, and you go to a restaurant now and you just download the menu, and you know, people bring you food, or you go get your food yourself at the window. Same thing in terms of you know, there's just all these jobs that are now not relevant. So the people who used to handle bookings and reservations, that's all gone. So I see a lot of that shift happening, and I think a lot of it won't come back, especially in the fast casual space, right? So servers at fast casuals, you know, not going to happen as much anymore. And I think it's definitely going to be a lot of stuff driven towards the phone and ordering ahead of time and all that type of stuff.
Interesting. Christy, your question, again, maybe I take a little bit of a different approach to this. Automation and AI and, the more recent buzzwords like contactless, touchless, right? I think those things can happen only up to a certain point. At the end of the day, if you're going in, sure, it can be all contactless and the person wearing the gloves hands you the bag of food. But someone somewhere in the value chain had to cook the food that you're going to eat. How are you going to get around that? I think fundamentally there are certain things that human beings are absolutely going to be needed for. Yes, now, to Josh's point, there are certain positions like servers, right? Some of the more lower, if you will, down the value chain positions, they're going to be gone. It's a way to cut their costs. It's a way to make it more efficient. It's a way to psychologically, all those customers who are afraid that they're going to catch COVID if they come to you, you're working with all of that stuff. But I think fundamentally, my friend, and again, who the hell knows what's going to happen with this pandemic? I think we're going to settle into whatever the new normal is. And yes, there will be a little bit of automation, but fundamentally, many businesses that require that human touch, right? Those businesses that we typically call Amazon proof. You can't order that stuff on Amazon. It still has to be done by humans. I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Well, the other concern I have to voice is that the people who have jobs are the people who are customers. So if there are fewer and fewer people who have jobs, there are fewer and fewer people who can be customers. And therefore, when I've been in the restaurant industry or watched it from the sidelines, a lot of the people eating in restaurants are people from restaurants. So you can't eliminate jobs without eliminating your customer base. So that just to add that in. So what other industries are there in the category of franchises? Because we've heard about restaurants. We all think of a restaurant when we hear the word franchise, but tell us about some of the others.
So another big myth, Amanda, is in franchising, it's just all about burgers and fries, right? That's all that there is. The big ones that we all know about and that we've all gone to. That could not be further from the truth. One of the things I like to say in my workshops with my clients is, I don't care who you are. I don't care what background you have or what interests you have. I can almost guarantee you there's a franchise out there for you. If you can think it, it is probably already a franchise. Yes, food is one of the categories. A second one is retail. So pre-COVID, guys, you probably walked into a mall, went into a store, bought whatever it is you bought, and had no idea that that particular store was part of a larger franchise chain. Retail is a great one. A third one, it's one of my favorites. It's what we call the service space. So think of if you are a homeowner or you live in a home, you rent a home, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be a homeowner. Think of all of the different things that as a homeowner, as a renter, you need. Painting, window treatments, flooring, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, dryer vent cleaning, right? Think of anything and everything that you might need. These are all examples of fantastic franchise brands. Service brands, and I typically call these need to have services. So in a time like the time that we are living in right now, overwhelmingly, and this is another note, Bob, that I think you'll find interesting. When I think of the last 6 clients that I placed this year into different brands, every single one of them have been need to have services. Yesterday, a client of mine signed on his franchise agreement. He's going to be in New Jersey. He bought 3 territories. It is a brand that provides residential and commercial tree cutting services. Think about it, right? Not something you necessarily think of when you think franchises, right, Amanda? You think Burger King, Subway, etc. The last veteran client I placed in a franchise was, we are now in October. At this point, it's been about 2.5, 3 months. He bought a pest control business. He started out in the residential space, but the average ticket price of the services he provides are going to be far higher in commercial. And so he has already pivoted to serving more commercial clients. Day 28, he had broken even and gotten to profitability on his investment. Day 28. He's currently looking at adding a second territory. He lives near Richmond. He's buying his second territory in North Carolina. He's run his numbers and it just makes sense for him.
And Faizun, you helped a guy with a chimney sweep franchise.
I sure did. You remember that?
That was great.
Yes. Chimney sweep services, right? You wouldn't think, these are not things that typically, if you're not me, if you're not in the industry and you're thinking, let me look at a franchise, you would think of the usual suspects. Unfortunately, guys, the other things that happens with usual suspects is typically these investments are very large investments. So with a McDonald's, let's forget the fact that you are not going to be able to get a really great location. Because if you have a great location and you're making money, chances are the franchisee is not selling their location. Whatever is available as resales available for you to buy are not going to be what we call grade A territories. But existing businesses also happen to cost you far more. So a typical McDonald's location, if you were looking to buy into that brand, you're looking at north of $700,000 all in one location. For the average client, Bob, the numbers just don't make sense.
Yep.
Service businesses, on the other hand, these typically happen to be some of the lowest investments with some of the highest potential returns that I have seen.